This is what the paddock looks like just after 4 days of grazing. This is roughly 50 by 60 by 30 meters. If you do the calculation, I'm in the field, I don't have my calculation hat on. It's with 6 ewes and 6 lambs of between 1 and 2 weeks old, roughly. They've eaten quite well. There is still quite a bit of green left though. They could have stayed longer perhaps, but 4 days is a bit over the maximum that you want before overgrazing of regrowing plants can occur again, so it's actually a bit long already. I'm hoping that when the lambs grow, as will the grass of course, this is still early season, but as both grow, I think that each paddock size and sheep needs will balance each other out quite nicely and eventually lead to a maximum of 3 days per paddock. But like I said, good deal of grass eaten, good deal of it trampled against the ground, and of course manure and urine sprinkled around quite nicely. And this is what we just moved towards. You can see the lambs disappear in the grass, which is quite good compared to last year. I think by this time, I don't think it was this high yet. This is a flock of happy sheep with very nice, fresh, juicy, sweet grass and other plants for them to eat. And this will happen every move. With every move, they will go onto fresh ground. So in this case, I did a little adaptation on the theme. We're now actually into strip grazing a bit. So again, I'm going to the very end of the current 2 paddocks. So this is the path that runs to and from the shelter. They can always access that wherever they are in this grazing system. They were in this paddock for 4 days. Now they are in this one that runs until the white quarter division. So the whole grazing area is divided into 4 quarters. But instead of giving them the whole paddock like I did here all at once, you may be able to see that there is a net fence that divides the paddock into, well, 2 at the moment, but I want to give them this paddock in 3 goes. So I think that by tomorrow afternoon, which will then mean that they're here for a whole day, because this is afternoon now, after a whole day I'll give them another 3rd adding to this, and then the next day the last 3rd as well, and by that time we'll see how far the grazing went and whether or not they should stay another day in the whole area. The strip grazing, it means effectively that now they've got a relatively small part to graze, so their impact, their grazing and their trampling and their manuring impact will be higher than if I would give them the whole paddock all at once, simply because their concentration is higher in this little part now for 1 day. Tomorrow, when I add 3rd number 2, they will not spend all that much time here in this first 3rd anymore, because most of the plants will have been eaten or trampled, and even those that are not will not be as attractive as those in the second 3rd, because that is completely untouched until then. And the same goes then for the 3rd to be added on the 3rd day. And then if there is still a lot of material left over, I can decide to give them that 4th day, even though it leads to some risk of overgrazing of the plants which are eaten first, so mostly in this first 3rd. But then I will be able to see that if on day 4 they will concentrate mostly here on the first 3rd. that they're on now. If that happens, then that probably means that there is some nice fresh regrowth, which is more palatable, more tasty than what grows in the second and the third thirds. And that gives me the signal that it is time to move, because after those 3 days, them eating the regrowth will mean overgrazing of the plants. And then they can go onto this paddock, and so it goes on and on and on, and we have 8 of those paddocks just in this quarter alone. So most of what you see until this wooden fence post here is on the quarter division line that divides then this quarter that they're on right now to the second one here, and then the third and the fourth one are on the other side of their shelter. Currently the quarter divide fence that should run here is not fully built up yet. It was a temporary setup with wires, but in winter that proved not to be so effective. So before they get to that point, I have to replace that with this kind of metal netting and more fence posts. But I have a good few days left before that becomes an issue. At this point in time, I can say that with a certain amount of confidence, I will make that in time, barring any unforeseen circumstances. By the way, I'm very pleased to see that the lambs are actually starting to eat. They are actually starting to graze already. This being my first lambing season, I did not even really know, but this is the answer then. 1 or 2 weeks is enough for them to start grazing. Hey, little one. Hey, sweetie. There's your mama. They're getting quite independent already. 8 paddocks per quarter. It means 32 paddocks all in all. The estimate at the moment, just a starting estimate, and we'll adjust that as the season goes, because so far I've only had 6 sheep last year. Now it will be 12, and it's the first time that I work with this fence setup in the growing season. So everything remains to be seen how it actually goes, but the estimate to work with and to adjust and now is 3 days per paddock once the lambs start grazing in seriousness as well. 32 times 3 makes 96, and that is about 3 months. So this being the 2nd or 3rd of June, I usually forget. I think it's the 3rd, but who knows. That makes that late August, early September, they'd be ready with this whole grazing system. Almost 2 hectares gives me about 3 months of grazing. And of course, by the time they reach the last paddock in quarter 4, this will have been fully recovered from grazing. And that means that perhaps I still have to work this out. I can start mowing a part of this grazing system so that I have a good bit of hay for winter. Or I could just leave it for, I could leave it for winter grazing. All things to be worked out soon. For now, happy sheep on lovely green grass, sequestering carbon